Hello and welcome to Ewe Sew You. My name's Zoe and this is my channel all about the crafty bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I spin on a spindle, I dabble in weaving from time to time and anything else that takes my crafty fancy. But today we're taking a look at all the things I've been working on in January. So grab a brew, put your feet up and let's get started. Welcome back to any returning viewers, and to any new viewers a very warm welcome to you. As I mentioned at the opening to this video, we're taking a look at all the things I've been working on in January today. So without any further ado, let's get going with what I am wearing. And we have one official finished object that technically was finished in February. Technically, it's the 3rd of February today, and I finished the Rowan bodysuit, which is this underlayer here, yesterday. So technically a February finish, but we're counting it for January. It's a Minerva Ambassador project, so there'll be more information about it on the Minerva website by the time this video goes live. Suffice to say that I am really pleased with it. I've made it in a jersey. It's got a very, very narrow stripe on it, so hopefully it's not going to strobe out on the camera today. And I had to grade across 3 sizes to fit my shape, but actually the fit is really good, apart from the elastic around the legs. But either the elastic that I've used doesn't sort of ping back as much as the one that Megan Nielsen used, or I misread the pattern and cut the longer length. Either way, next time I'm using shorter elastic, and there will be a next time. This pattern comes with multiple options. So it's a bodysuit and a t-shirt pattern. They print the top of the bodice and the bottom of the bodysuit or the bottom of the t-shirt as separate pattern pieces that you put together. So there's no seam, but you can mix and match between them. They've got the turtleneck, which is this one. They've got a crew neck and they've got a V-neck, and they've got multiple sleeve length options as well. So super versatile, and I'm really pleased with it. So I can see me making a few more of these with different combinations over goodness knows how long. It's going to be a really useful part of my wardrobe. And I'm wearing that with the new Craft House waistcoat that I gave you a sneak peek of last month, showing the lining side. Because the lining is not Minerva fabric, the outside is. And this actually links in really nicely to my next finished object, which again is technically a February finish. I finished it on the 1st of February, but I did most of the work on it in January, and that's these. Now I will put in a picture or a twirl of me wearing them so you can see them properly, but these are the Mitchell trousers. I've done Ewe, which is the wide leg. I'll show you my lining contrast pockets that match the lining on the waistcoat. So I have my own little sort of 70s inspired cord suit type thing. So these trousers, super comfy. I did grade between the one size and the next size down from the waist to the hips. So bigger on the waist than the hips, because that suits my shape according to the measurements on the pattern. But actually, I don't think I needed to. I think I probably could have got away with just going the smaller size. The reason being, these things on the side. There's so much space in here for these ties that I don't think I actually needed to go up the size. I will be making these again, so we'll try it out next time. But yeah, these are really nice trousers. I didn't need to do much adjusting other than the waist and hip ratio. I didn't even need to adjust the length of the leg, which for somebody who's 5'4" is a goodness me. That never happens. I always have to shorten the legs, but I didn't for these. So first thing that the pattern has you do, this is a closet core pattern, is the welt pockets. Now they're not perfect, but they'll do. The pockets sit at the bottom of a dart here, so they are a bit complex, a bit tricky to do, but well worth the effort, I think. So you can do 1 or 2 or none. There's an option to put a button on them as well to keep them closed. I obviously haven't bothered doing that. Then the next thing you do, so first of all you make your tabs, then your straps, then you do your welt pockets, then you think you're onto a safe ground with your front pockets. Oh yeah, I know how to do front pockets on trousers. Nice and straightforward. No. These pockets are set into the pleat that comes down here. So they're not a standard construction, not complicated as such, but it does take a little bit of thinking to work out how things are lining up. Then the next step is the fly front. And as we all know, fly fronts are tricky. They're a multi-step project thing. But yeah, definitely worth the effort. Once they're done, they do look good, but they are a little bit of a take your time to work them element. After that, it really is plain sailing because you're just seaming up and what have you. But yeah, really pleased with these. I will be making another pair, but the next pair that I make will be the other view, so the tapered leg rather than the wide leg. But yeah, these are going to get a lot of wear with and without the waistcoat, so pleased with that. Okay, so moving on to another finished object. We were cracking them out this month. Now, I'm not going to actually hold up this project for you because it's huge and it's heavy, but it has taken me like 5 years, just over 5 years to complete. I'll put a picture up here or here, wherever it fits, probably this side maybe, I don't know. Wherever it appears, there will be my Sophie's Universe blanket draped over my 3-seater sofa. This thing is a beast. At some point I will weigh it to work out how much yarn actually went into it. Made out of Woolcraft, Carencraft cakes, which is Aran weight yarn. They come in 200 grams of cake, and I had to buy more several times throughout the course of making this project. It's a pattern by Dedri Ace, and she uses the Look What I Made blog to talk about her patterns and to do mystery crochet alongs and that kind of thing. So that's definitely worth looking at. But yeah, so glad to have, wherever I put it on the screen, this blanket done. It's been taking up space waiting to be done. And yeah, the cat's claimed it now. So yeah. But yeah, really pleased with that. We have some smaller finished projects as well. So first up, if you remember my Vlogmas this year, you'll see that I got a couple of kits in my advent from my stepmother. This was one of them. This is adorable. This is the Little Bird kit from Ruzza Farm, which is a UK, it's either Devon or Cornwall, southwest of the UK farm. And they do these little kits and they are so cute. This I worked up in a couple of hours, if that. There was a moment working the head where I was like, hang on, how's it going to shape the beak? But trust the pattern, it worked. So yes, that's my little bird. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's adorable. The other kit that I got in my advent, I have also made up, and again, I'll put a picture on screen for you. And that was a little felt robin thing. I think it was a Trimmets kit, something like that. So it's a Christmas tree decoration. So I made that up right at the beginning of January so that I could pack it away with my Christmas decorations when I took the tree down. So I don't have it to show you here now, but it will be on the tree next year. So yeah. Moving on to spinning. Again, if you've watched last month's video, you'll have seen that I got a new spindle for Christmas. I got a support spindle. And my stepmother had a chunk of fibre ready for me to test it out on. This is that chunk all spun up. I think it's a merino. It's come out woolen spun, and it's so soft. Compared to what I normally spin, this is so soft and fluffy. It's a proper woolen spin, which I can't get on my drop spindles. So I'm really pleased with this. I haven't set the twist yet, so I haven't got final measurements for it. But yeah, really pleased with how this has turned out. And I'm looking forward to getting more stuff done on my support spindle over the next year or so. It will probably have to be one of my goals during Tour de Fleece later in the year.
Okay, so Editing Zoe just hopping on to point out that I also completed a Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. I've been wearing it a lot, which is why I forgot to include it. It's in my handbag. I worked this up in West Yorkshire Spinners in Silent Night and Vintage Tinsel, so two of their Christmas colourways. And yeah, it's comfy and cosy. I just wish I'd made it half an inch longer. Maybe next time.
And what else do we have? We have some other crafts with finished objects this month as well. So let's start with, I'm just going to hoik this off the wall. I have had in stash for quite some time a willow kit that made hearts and fishies. So I had a little go. Now this has been sat in my stash for quite a long time, so the willow was probably not at its best, and it's the first time I've done willow weaving, proper willow weaving anyway. So here's the heart, which just lives up on this wall here. We've got a nail up there, so I'm just going to pop that back, and it fills the space on that wall that was quite pale and uninteresting and uninspired otherwise, and yeah, that's trickier to do when you're sat here. So that fills that space over the fire. I am probably going to decorate it with some little bits of crochet at some point. I'm thinking of mini flowers and butterflies and leaves and that kind of thing. We'll see if I get round to it, but that's my thinking. And then in that same kit, it also gave instructions on how to make these fish. I have no idea what I'm going to do with that. So that's not particularly my style, but I thought I'd give it a go and see how it turned out. And then I had a little bit of an experiment with the method of weaving that you do on the tail here. I thought, well, if I can do that over a larger area, I might be able to use things as like trivets and coasters and things. So I had a go doing it over a large space with this fish. So yeah, I mean, interesting for practicing techniques, but the fish are not really my style. So we'll see what happens to them over time. I've got one more finished object to show you. There's one more completely finished object to show you, and that is this little book. Again, it's a kit that I've had in my stash for quite a while. So I've got scrap paper inside, all different bits of paper, and it's a sewn binding. So this was a nice little evening project. I can see me making more books at some point. No idea what I will put in them. Not a clue. But it was quite an enjoyable process to do. So yeah, so that's going to be happening again at some point. Goodness knows when, but at some point I'm going to put that down on that side. Okay, so that's my completely finished project. I'm going to transition into my works in progress with this project that you may have seen my making of video on. This is my doormat from the living room door that I made on the peg loom using my circular weaving pegs. And as you can see, I ran out of warp, so it was not quite semicircular. It was about a wedge or two short at this side. So although it is kind of finished, what we've discovered is it's not really deep enough for the purposes that we're looking for. I can fit my feet on here, but my partner can't quite fit his feet comfortably on here. So what I've decided to do is actually extend it. And on my peg loom at the moment, I am working on a strip to go across the top. So this is about half the length it needs to be at the moment. I'm weaving it in exactly the same manner. I've got the thicker warps coming down the middle, and the weft is the same mixture of scraps of fabric that I was using for the circular. So I'm going to finish this off, and then I'm going to put the circular pegs back on and weave another couple of wedges to fill the gap. And then I'm just going to sew them all together, and we'll have a more functional mat to go by the back door out of the living room into the garden. I'm just going to pop that to one side as well. So yeah, it's been a busy month. I'm rattling through things a little bit, I do realise. But that's because I've got so much to show you. So what else? What's coming next? Let's move into cross stitch, as this is sitting here. You'll probably be familiar with this project if you've been watching my channel for a while. This is a DMC kit. It's a cross stitch that's printed onto the Ada fabric. There's a line of about 4 designs of these women in pretty floral dresses. And you just stitch over the printing that's on the fabric. Apart from the black lines, they stay as drawings. Now previously I was still working on the skirt in the blue. I have now got all the blue done, and I'm working on putting in the flowers in the pink. So yeah, the pink's going in. After that, we've got some yellows to add, and then a little bit of back stitching to add the details in. But it's coming along, and I'm hoping to have this finished maybe February, but definitely March. I'd like to have it done by the end of March, if not the beginning of March, so that I can then get that framed up and on the wall in the craft room. So yeah, that's going well. I've actually touched it I left it alone for ages because I've been doing other things in the run up to Christmas, so it's been nice to get back to that for a bit. Thinking of Christmas, I mentioned the support spindle earlier. This is my support spindle, and I have a new project on it. This is a merino fibre from World of Wool. The name of the fibre has just leapt out of my head, so I'll pop that on the screen. I bought this a little while ago when I was stocking up for, would have been Tour de Fleece last year. So I've had it in stash for a little while. It's going to get spun up on here because I had such a nice woolly result to the spinning with the blue from my stepmother that thought it'd be nice to do some more sort of merino type fibre on here and get more of that woolen spun going. So that's coming along. I'll just dip in and out of that from time to time and work it up. Hopefully I'll have that done in plenty of time to clear the spindle ready for Tour de Fleece. But I do have some other projects, other spinning projects to get done in that time window as well. So Tour de Fleece is usually sort of June, July time. So again, if I can get them done around about Easter, so March, April time, I get my spindles all sort of clear-ish at that point, then I'll be in a good place for Tour de Fleece later in the year. Another long running project is on the go and has been touched for the first time in ages. And that is my Gamer Crafting Blanket Club project. Now, I had the club 2 years ago. I think it was 21 that I got it. And I'm currently working on April's square. So I am a little bit behind. But I'm using the central square from the Sophie's Universe blanket to make up a Sophie's Dream with the Gamer Crafting yarn. Now, I got the sparkle base in the 4 plies of the sock weight yarn, and it is very highly variegated yarn, so you can't really see the pattern as such coming through the stitches on the Sophie's Dream squares, but the pattern is so textured that you really can feel it, so it's going to be a really sort of snuggly textural blanket by the time it's finished. So I'm enjoying working on that, albeit slowly. Hopefully, now that Sophie's Universe is out the way, I can get all the squares done up for the Sophie's Dream, ready to seam them together at the end of this year when it turns cold again. I'm doing 1 square per month. You've got 2 skeins of yarn for each month, so that does leave me with 12 skeins in stash to use for other projects. I'm going to wait until I've finished the blanket before I assign them to projects though. First of all, in case I want to make the blanket bigger, and secondly, to make sure that I've got yarn that I can use for seaming the squares together and a border that I haven't decided what option I'm going to do for the border as of yet. I'll work that out once all the squares are together. So yeah, so hopefully by Easter I will be working on the summer squares, so the June, July, August squares. Then hopefully by the end of the summer, I'll have the squares almost all complete, if not all complete, so that during the winter, when it turns cold, I can be seaming that blanket and putting the border on and have a nice big blanket over my lap when it's cold. So that's the plan. We'll see if it happens. But yeah, that's the plan. I have a knitting project on the go. It's not very exciting at the moment. I have toes. A pair of toes. They're in West Yorkshire Spinners yarn. They're going to be a pair of vanilla socks. So not the most intricate, not the most detailed of projects. They're going to be finished within a couple of weeks, so you will see them again fairly soon. But it's nice to have something a little less complicated, because I'm doing all these newer to me crafts, or these crafts that I don't do quite so often, and I'm doing the complicated crochet and I'm doing the complicated sewing. It's nice to have something like this and like the cross stitch that just don't require the same amount of brain power to work on. So yeah, so that's my TV knitting at the moment, is a pair of vanilla socks. And that's all the knitting that I'm working on at the moment. It's not the only knitting that I've got on the needles, just the only ones that it's actually getting actively worked on at the minute. I was talking about complicated sewing. I've done most of the complicated sewing now. I've got one more Minerva project to do, which is going to be a Fibre Mood Mabel top, which is up here. I'll put the picture on the screen of the pattern. It's all cut out, it's up in the craft room, but next to the sewing machine, ready to be sewn up. I had hoped to have it done with the rest of the stuff so that I could use it in the photos for my Minerva posts, but it just didn't happen. The trousers took longer than I anticipated, and really, I should have realised. Trousers are tricky. They're tricky to get the fit. They've got lots of steps, lots of stages, lots of complicated bits and pieces. So I should have expected them to take as long as they did, if not slightly longer. So yeah, so I ran out of time to get the Mabel top done, but that's okay. I've got until the end of February to get that up on the Minerva website, so that's fine. I'll show it to you next month. I'm looking forward to having that one done. It's going to be an interesting top. It's like an elevated long sleeve t-shirt pattern. So yeah, so that'll be interesting. There's a couple of interesting things that I've not done before. It's got gathers. I've never gathered jersey before. I've never gathered anything with stretch before. At least not beyond sort of easing things in, not like proper gathers, because it's got these gathered sleeves. So yeah, so that'll be interesting. So looking forward to that. That's going to get sewn up hopefully over the next week, so that I can start wearing it as part of my rotation in my wardrobe. So yeah, so that's the plans. And the last work in progress that I have to show you is at least as old a project as Sophie's Universe was, possibly even slightly older. Now, I have been meaning to get back to this for a while. My aunt, my mother's sister, she makes beautiful quilts by hand, like completely by hand. She certainly does the quilting by hand. I believe she pieces by hand, but I'm not 100% there. And it's something I've been meaning to have a go at for ages. So about 5.5 years ago or so, around about when I was starting Sophie's Universe, or as I say, it might have been slightly before, I started making, I actually did a creative bug class, I think it was, making log cabin quilts. So I made this quilt top. Most of this fabric is Edgar Allan Poe themed. It's all out of Fat Quarters. I can't remember who made it all, or where I got it from, or all that sort of stuff. But things like these beetles and the writing and that kind of stuff, they're Edgar Allan Poe fabrics. And then we've got some batik style prints and some plains in here to make my log cabin quilt top. It's a square quilt. It's not a huge quilt. It's going to be a lap quilt. Log cabin blocks are nice and straightforward to make. So yes, I've enjoyed working on that. And then for the back, normally you would use one piece of fabric for the back. But the Edgar Allan Poe Fat Quarters, some of them were larger prints that wouldn't really work for the log cabin style block. So what I decided to do for the back was essentially to make it a reversible quilt. So I've pieced together the back. It's not exactly the same size. It's close, but it's not exactly the same size as the front at the moment. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of adjusting and adding strips on to make it the right size. But we've got these big black squares that have all these skulls and leaves and things in, and then we've got the ravens on the white background. So they just wouldn't have worked for the log cabin block. So instead I've got this lovely pieced together back. So as I say, that's going to make a reversible quilt. So the next step for this project, to get it ready to turn it into a quilt sandwich, obviously as I say, I need to make sure that the back and the front are the same size. And part of the way that I'm going to do that is by using borders. It's going to make the quilt slightly bigger, which is good because it's lap quilt size, but having a little bit of extra space is not a bad thing. I haven't totally decided whether I'm going to put one border or two borders on the quilt yet. Obviously there's going to be at least one on the front and one on the back, but I haven't decided if I'm going to do two or not. I'll put the first one on and then decide, I think, probably. But I have ordered enough fabric that I can do two borders and then a binding on the quilt. So I have here 3 fabrics. This fabric it's like a dark charcoaly grey, almost back black quilting cotton with this grey speckly effect on it. I can't remember who made it. And I haven't decided whether it's going to be border or binding yet. I need to lay the fabrics down next to the quilt top and the quilt back and make that decision at a later point. But yeah, so I thought that was an interesting print on it, and it matches, or at least coordinates with, some of the textures on like the batik prints and that kind of thing, more than the Edgar Allan Poe ones. But the colour wise goes with the Edgar Allan Poe, which has some blacks in there as well. So that's fabric number 1. The other 2 fabrics that I got are both Moda fabrics, and they are both from the Grunge line, which will double check that they are Moda. So I've got them in 2 colours. Yeah, Moda. I've got the cream, which is this colour. So again, this coordinates nicely with the fabrics in the Edgar Allan Poe set, and picks out some of the cream shades in there, and it's got this nice texture on there. If I just hold that a little bit further towards the camera for you so that you can see it. So it's got this sort of grungy, almost like a dry brush effect on it in the print. Like when you dry brush walls and canvases, that kind of thing. And again, Moda Grunge in Bison. It's got this sort of chocolatey brown with the dry brushing effect in grey. So again, I haven't decided which fabrics are going to be the borders, and which fabrics are going to be the binding. But that's the next step, is to get the borders on. Once they're on, I can then measure it again and work out how much wadding I need to buy, because the wadding that I had bought, first of all, I cut into it to use for other projects. And second of all, it's too narrow for the quilt that I'm making. I don't really want to be dealing with piecing together wadding when I'm not an experienced quilter. So I'm going to measure it and then buy wadding that is big enough, so a bit wider than the square, and definitely a bit longer. I think wadding quite often comes either in rolls or rectangles, so we'll make it work. And then I can sandwich it all together and do the quilting. Haven't yet decided whether I'm going to quilt by hand or on the machine. It's probably going to be a little less wrangly and irritating to do it by hand, because I don't have a quilting sewing machine. I mean, it's capable of quilting, it's just not got the big table that you quite often get with quilting machines, and I don't have a lot of space in my sewing room, so I think trying to wrangle a quilt in there, even though it's a small quilt, might be a little bit irritating, but we'll see. It kind of depends on how I want to quilt it, what pattern I want to stitch onto it, as to whether I do it by hand or whether I do it by machine. So yes, I'll decide that later on. So hopefully the borders will be on by the end of the month, and then I can decide which type of wadding to get, how big the wadding to get, and how I'm going to quilt it. And then that can be, certainly if I'm doing it by hand, it'll be a long-term project. So that's all my works in progress. Yep, nothing's hiding. So yeah, plans moving forwards. Well, obviously I've got my Make 9 that I talked about at the beginning of the year, and this counts as the first Make 9 done for the year. It's my base layer done, the Rowan bodysuit. So yeah, great start. 1 month into the year, and I've got one done. So that's good going. I've obviously got the next set of projects to think about for that. The knitting projects are obviously longer term projects, so I need to plan out when I'm going to do those and get the yarn in time for them. Right, more immediately, I'm thinking about the hand sewn garments, because again, that's going to take a bit of time, and for the sort of garment that I'm thinking to do as a first hand sewn project, thinking sort of a loose fitting shirt, so I don't need to worry too much about fitting, more about the sewing. But the sorts of fabrics I'll be using, I'm thinking linens, cottons, that kind of thing. So they're more sort of summery fabrics. So it would be nice to be able to have it done in time for the summer, which means I'm going to need to start on it relatively soon because I've got no idea how long it's going to take me to hand sew a garment. No clue. So that's coming up. I'm also trying to pick out, I've got a few options of projects to do for the start of my improving how I fit clothes. Let's call it a project. As I said at the beginning of the year, I want to get better at fitting and finishing my garments. So I am thinking about what project to do for that. I have a fabric and a pattern on its way from Minerva that could work for it. The pattern will definitely need a lot of attention being paid to fit. But it's a dress pattern, and I was thinking of starting with a top for the improving the fit, but I'll have to get this pattern made up within a couple of months of it coming, so we'll see. Yeah, so decisions are in process for that. Obviously more spinning is going to be coming up this year, more crochet is going to be coming up this year. I will get back into knitting, like bigger things than socks, at some point fairly soon, and get some of these projects off my needles. Okay, so if you remember at the beginning of the year when I was setting my goals and my Make 9, I had a total list of projects that were being carried over from 2022 into 2023 of 33 whips. 33 works in progress, things that have been started and not been finished. 14 of those were active, as in they'd been worked on during 2022, and the rest were not. Now, I set myself the goal of completing all of the sewing whips, all the projects that have been cut out by the end of February, which I've almost done. I have just the Mabel top to sew up to have that complete and done and finished, so that's good. I had put down to have all spinning works in progress done by the end of March, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through all the dates because it doesn't matter quite so much, but I was aiming to reduce my list of whips and to have made progress on all of the other whips that I had on my list. So whether that's frogging them or completing them or whatever. To just make noticeable progress on the 17 that I haven't sort of set myself a little deadline for. So coming out of January, how am I doing? These numbers are just relating to that list. So I started with 33 total whips and 14 active whips. I now have 31 total whips from that initial list, and 13 of them are active. So I've brought some from the dormant list into the active list. So progress is being made towards that goal. So I'm really pleased about that. I don't know if I'll update you on that every single month, but I will use you as my accountability buddy and keep you updated with how I'm doing on that. So yeah, really pleased with how it's going so far. As I say, a couple of things technically finished in February that I'm counting towards this video because they're going up on Minerva today, and this video is going live tomorrow. So I think we can count that as January. There were January days in this week. Okay, so let's see how far I get. In the meantime, you may be interested in this video here with one of my projects.